Welcome to Everything PC. This is episode 4 of season 2. I'm Duncan McLeod, editor of Tech Central. I'm joined, as always, by Gerhard Pretorius from Computers Only. How are you doing?
I'm good.
Mac.
Mac.
Yeah.
Mac.
Is that what we're talking about today?
Yes, Mac.
macOS, to be specific, which I am running here, and quite enjoying it.
Yes. Make good chips now.
Make good chips too.
Better than Intel.
Oh. Speaking of chips, what have we got here in front of us?
Chippies. Simba chippies.
Lots of chippies.
Simba chippies, yes.
Lots of very old chippies.
Yes, old chippies.
AMD Athlon 64. This is heavy.
Yes, it's all that. What's it? That's just an all Athlon, right?
Athlon 64.
Yes, this is.
That was a
core.
That sold very well, that chip.
Yes, this is the 4000. So this was the top spec version that came out.
Very heavy.
Oh yes, very valuable back then. That was almost a 10,000 rand chip there.
Really?
Oh yeah,
Wow.
they were very expensive.
10,000 rand.
People forget how expensive.
1999 money or something.
Oh yes, that's how people forget how expensive chips were in the early days. They were stupendously expensive.
Incredible.
So it's like those were close to I think that was close to like $1,000 for one of those.
Incredible.
Okay. So they
assembled in Malaysia.
Yeah, no, they've got a big. I actually now own that fam. They actually bought that manufacturing place. So you'll see now all the new AMD chips and everything will all have made in Malaysia.
What else have we got here? What you got there?
Well, they've got an old Intel here, Pentium. So a lot of
original
old customers.
Pentium. Wow, this is from 94, 95, if I remember correctly.
That should be 93, 94. That's an early sample.
Yeah.
That's still the one, as you said, is the... I do maths 1, 2,
Can't
4.
add 1 and 2. 1 plus 2 equals 7.
My counting are very good.
Yeah, that was a long time ago. The
yes,
Pentium flaw, I mean, tech journalists wrote so much about this.
Oh, no, man, that was funny. And then
much lighter processor than the Athlon.
Yes, well, these are still made on graphite that they use the chips on these.
Okay.
And we've got a K6, original K6 that came out.
Also
this
from
was
the
one
90s.
of the 98. This
98.
was one of the original chips that actually made AMD what they are.
I had one of these.
Yes, yeah. K6, they were like these are the bee's knees at 1 gigahertz clock speed. Yeah.
Yes, I remember 1 gig. They broke the 1 gig's barrier. Amazing. Single core processor, hey?
Oh, yes, no. That's only, I think I've got some Core 2 quads. When Intel started to go to Intel, Core 2 quad. A Q9650. So it's one of the high-end chips. This is like, what's it? Well, that's before i7s, but this is...
So this is an early Core series chip?
Yes, this was the original Core series.
Tiny.
Yes, tiny chips. That's when they also moved to LGA. They moved from the normal pin gray array to the actual LGA socket there.
Amazing. Incredible. And what else we got here? This is cool. Pentium with a math co-processor.
Yeah.
MMX technology.
Now we can do maths properly.
So this was basically the second generation Pentium.
Yes. Now that's when they started. Because in the old days, there were actually 2 separate chips. You had your MMX chips.
It's an Athlon.
At some future point, we'll bring one of those boards in. We actually have 2 chips. One does the actual advanced vector instructions, and the other chip does the actual CPU part.
AMD, what is this?
That's an Athlon, I think.
Sempron.
Oh, Sempron. Hey.
This was the cheaper version, right?
The budget line.
Budget line, Sempron. Really does look like a budget chip, doesn't it?
Oh, Sempron.
What's that little colored bit on the bottom? Is that the actual chip?
That's the actual chip, yeah. That's the actual processor.
It's tiny, hey? It's the size of a fingernail.
Yeah. Now that's amazing. And most of these things they probably all 65 nanometer plus, some of these.
Yeah, I was just seeing whether the light is absorbing this or not. It is quite reflective.
Yeah, no, it should be quite. There's one cleaner one there, the old one.
Yeah, that's another Athlon, is it?
Athlon.
My eyesight is so bad.
Let me check. Oh no, that's an Intel. There's also a Core 2 quad. Was the
Core 2.
The spec below the other one we had there.
And this is another AMD.
From 2006.
This one is an AMD. I can't see what it is though.
It should be another. This is a Athlon. Yes.
Athlon. Okay.
Athlon, 1999.
Okay. And underneath this bag of chips, we have
the state-of-the-art Dell that's just launched.
Pick this thing. Right. Luggable.
That comes with advanced features as VGA.
I can do.
Yeah, well, you can do
also muscle.
There we go. Apple will sell it as feature. do exercises while you move the laptop.
Wow, look at this thing. Look at these ports.
Yes, advanced features, don't you know?
VGA, PS2 for your keyboard and mouse.
Mouse, yes.
That looks proprietary.
That's probably a proprietary docking station port. They probably have a name for it.
That is a parallel port.
Parallel port.
Serial port.
Serial, yep. For all your serial scanning needs. And
another PS2 port. A very large air vent. Telephone jack.
Yes, no, of course you have to have one of those for your fax and scan, don't you know? You have to fax.
Of course. Also, you're going to send a fax.
How are you going to
Ethernet. 3.5 millimeter audio jack.
Wow, that's advanced feature now.
That's yeah, that's indeed.
It's gone so old it became new again.
Yes, indeed.
Gone full circle.
Infrared port. What was that for?
Well, for infrared, remember your phone? That's how you connected your phone to your laptop, was through infrared, remember? The Nokias and all that stupid stuff.
Yes, of course.
Yay. Wireless technology. Remember, these things I don't think this one actually had Wi-Fi.
I
think it might have a rudimentary Wi-Fi.
I don't know how to open it. Help me.
Oh, there's a button there. That's when you had buttons
to open up your laptop screen, which laptop screen is about a centimeter thick.
Feel this amazing trackpad.
Wow, look at the size of that.
That is humongous. This is a new feature coming out. Less is more.
Size of two Lion matchboxes.
And it still has the IBM little mouse control knob as well.
Oh, that's interesting. On the Dell?
On the Dell, yes. They copied that from IBM.
Wow, look at that.
Advanced features.
Designed for Microsoft Windows. I can't read that.
That should be
Microsoft Windows 2000 Professional. Okay, yes. This is quite a recent machine then.
Oh, well.
And it's running a Pentium 2 with MMX.
It's a Pentium 3.
Oh, Pentium 3. I told you my eyesight was shot.
No, that's fine. Because, again, I don't know. There you can see Windows. It's a legit copy of Windows Millennium.
Millennium Edition.
Yes. You can take out the code and activate, please.
So this thing crashed every 5 minutes, in other words.
Yeah, no, there's a reason why it was as heavy as a brick, is that you don't throw it away.
Interesting that it says designed for Windows 2000 on the key next to the keyboard on the back. It says it's running Windows Millennium Edition. I know which one I'd choose.
Yes, no, that's...
And there's rather a large fan over there.
Well, it's an open fan, and most of the PCs, at least the fans are hidden or something. That's like literally the dust can just go through and out.
Exactly.
Advanced filtering tech with no filtering required.
Must be quite dirty inside this machine, I would guess. And did it have a CD-ROM drive?
Right in the front. That's advantage features.
In the front.
You use it in the front. It's cool, man.
Amazing.
It's new age, man. You put it in the front, you get your CD coming out.
Great.
And advanced features are a removable battery.
This is about 6 kilograms, I would guess.
Oh, yeah. No, that's probably like close to 6-7 kilos.
Yeah.
Excluding the charging.
People used to lug those around the world.
Oh, of course. Business people and all that jazz. You had to do all your notes and so forth. You even have advanced features that you can add your...
Oh, my word. That is a PCMCIA
card,
slot.
Yes. Jeez, which I'm struggling
I may have joked about this on the show before, but you know what PCMCIA stands for?
You did tell me. What's it?
People can't memorize computer industry abbreviations.
There we go. Yep. No, this is well before my time.
I remember using an iBurst modem in one of those to connect to the internet in the very early days. iBurst PCMCIA card.
Yeah. No, we've got a couple. We'll bring those in at some point when I can get one of these working.
If I recall correctly, it connected if you were near to an iBurst tower at blazing fast, 64 kilobits a second.
Yeah, amazing tech.
Let's put that back there. And we've got one more, that Tower of Babel or whatever it is.
Well, the days of envy of installing a operating system.
From floppy disks.
From floppy to floppy, where it took you probably close to half a day to install your OS.
And this isn't all of the disks. There's more of these. This is the Windows 95 installation media.
There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 12, 13. There's 15. It goes up to 22.
22 installation disks. So I think that if I recall correctly, and I installed this many times off these disks, if I remember correctly, the last 6 or 7 disks were simply for drivers.
Yes. No, printer drivers and all that of malarkey.
Would you like to install a printer driver for the HP, blah, 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 blah? Please insert disk number 20.
Yeah, no, the early days of Microsoft, man, how things have changed. From now, you can just download the ISO.
Yeah,
you can't
directly from Microsoft. Yeah.
Yes, that's what an advanced feature. Yes,
and on a good connection, it comes down in a matter of minutes.
Oh yeah, no, that's now you can just put it on a stick and install it. Well, we do it daily because I work at a computer company. We do that daily, Windows install. So it's put a stick in, install Windows. If they've got an SSD in there, Windows is installed in like maybe give or take like a minute and 2 minutes. It's installed. Install the drivers. We can get a machine in and out in like give or take like an hour and a bit, and machine's built in and out.
Yes,
with Windows installed. So the simplicity has increased. Well, the complexity has increased with that. The simplicity has now made it so easy now to just plug it in. There you go.
Yeah.
It's
So, bit of history there.
Yes.
Amazing stuff. Let's get into this week's show. Before I forget, which I have a tendency to do, our show is brought to you by HP and Microsoft. Thanks, guys. We're going to have a very interesting chat with some senior executives from HP and Microsoft in a future episode in this season. So look out for that. Looking forward to that discussion. We're going to find out all about HP's laptops, and they make some amazing stuff, actually. Those HP Omen laptops. I don't know if you've had a look at those.
NVs, 360s and so forth. There's a couple of nice HP laptops. They do. I've never had a main problem with their high up line of laptops and so forth with HP.
Yeah.
So NVs,
we'll have a proper look at that in that episode.
Yeah.
And also talk about Windows and Microsoft and how they see the world of PC.
Yes, what's their thoughts and their vision and going forwards.
Absolutely, look forward to that. But today we're going to talk about something a little bit off topic, you could almost argue, in the PC world. Although, a lot of people make the point, especially PC users make the point that Macs are really PCs. Don't tell a Mac user that, though.
Well, the personal computer. The Americans put everything a computer. Everything's a computer. Even it's a phone, computer.
But Apple calls them a Mac. Don't call them a PC.
Yeah, no.
So Mac. Right, Mac OS. Because we are doing the sort of general focus of this season of Everything PC is having a look at operating systems.
Yeah.
We can't really ignore Mac OS.
No.
And I've been a Mac OS user for going on maybe 2 years now. Hardcore Windows user before that. Tinkered with Linux a bit here and there, but my main operating system has always been Windows, and I've really liked Windows. Ever since Windows 7 came out, it's been a pretty good OS. Windows Vista was a disaster. Windows 7 was pretty stable and useful. I skipped over Windows 8 mainly because I didn't like the interface that much. We discussed that in some detail in our last episode. Then Windows 10 came out, and Windows 10 was a pretty good, stable OS. It's advanced quite significantly over the years, but it was a good OS, and I've liked it. But I don't know, I kind of felt like I needed a change of scenery, as one does from time to time.
Yes.
And so I've been using Mac OS, and I'm quite liking it.
Well, I presume you jumped in when Mac brought out the M1 chip.
That is exactly when I jumped in.
Mm-hmm. So that's probably, I thought probably the best time to jump into Mac was with the M1, because that shows you all the advantages of Mac. Having tight control of the whole ecosystem, software, hardware, everything integrated, and copying what they did with the phones. Yeah. Which is ingenious. Yeah. Some mode that worked for them, just make it bigger and make it on a laptop, and there you go. So
it's worked incredibly well. And Intel really was a problem for them, especially in their laptops. I mean, the battery life, and it was a problem in PC too. They were suffering the same problems as the Windows PC world.
Intel completely stagnated with innovation in mobile sense. Desktop and server, they were okay-ish and so forth, but the whole power efficiency thing wasn't really Intel's main focus, and that's due to many problems, foundry problems, internal problems, and all those jazz.
And they're still struggling.
Yeah, the little fat kid is still running, so it's going to take a while for Intel to catch up and so forth. So it's also a good thing for Apple to come in, because Apple's now becoming like a kind of a third party to the chip manufacturing and so forth. So it's good competition for AMD and Intel, NVIDIA. So all of those companies now need to compete with Apple. And then it's also good for that, so that other laptop brands need to compete with Apple. So Asus, HP, Dell, Lenovo.
It's lit a fire under Intel for sure.
I think in the next coming years, especially from AMD and from Intel, because they're bringing out more aggressive chips, I think we'll see some innovations coming in, where there's certain areas where we can do the old joke of Apple does something and then it takes 4 years for them to copy the same thing that what Android has done. So we're still waiting to see Apple properly bringing touch to laptops. I don't know why it's taking Apple so long to bring touch to laptops. It's like you make a phone that's touch. Why can't you do that on your laptop?
I don't know. As a Mac user, I don't really want touch.
That's the problem. Is most people say they don't want touch. Same as my doctors and my lawyers. All the time. No, I won't use touch. And as soon as they use a pen and touch, boom, sold.
Oh, really?
Oh, no, it's always stuck. They'll never go back now. Never. Once you go touch, you'll never go back. That's the problem. I think Apple's problem there is probably just they want to get it just right, which is a bit stupid.
Or they don't want to cannibalize the iPad.
Kind of, but it's like at some point they probably that I can see that argument coming through. But the problem is it's like if you can make the laptop, okay, I can see where that points. But the laptops are more expensive. So normally the iPad will be the budget. Again, that's now you're money in your own field because they eventually have the M1 chip also on the Mac, so and the tablet. So essentially, it is literally just a PC. If you just slap a keyboard onto it, and there you go, you can use it like a laptop.
Yeah.
So they're competing with
Maybe
themselves.
They don't want to muddy the water too much.
I would rather have one product than having different products because the Apple tends to not be great with supporting products for a long time. So I would prefer Apple to actually have one product and then they can support one product and there you go. So if they want to make a touch version, you can make it a 360. Presume they just don't like the current mechanism of 360 and how it's implemented or something. There's probably a reason. And again, because Apple does a lot of this stuff internally, maybe the internal development team is just not catered to do that yet.
Or maybe they just don't want to be seen to be copying the PC.
Yeah, they tend to do that. Eventually do that as well. Same as the what's that always on screen that they now only have now on Apple.
Yes, I always joke that Apple, always on screen. We've just invented the always on screen.
It's like meantime, it's been out for a while.
Android for years.
Yeah, it's like I thought it was like Apple never pioneers something that great.
They don't pioneer it, but they perfect it. That's their business model.
Well, I would say their perfection is eye in the beholder and so forth, but I would give credit where they go. Yes, a bunch of people doing stupid stuff, not understanding that when you put it all together and you actually package it properly, then you can make it truly work. That's Apple's specialty, is to look at other people's stuff, cheat from them, copy that, and say, this is actually how you need to use it. Oh, okay, there we go. That's Apple's expertise. And kudos to them for working that out. Even goes for their operating system and how you use it. So, me personally, I'm not a big fan of the OS and the UI and how they use it. I bashed my head a couple of times. My brother's way more familiar with it because he actually technically helps customers with Apple devices and their software issues. You have to wipe and reload, or if they get viruses. Yeah. Ironically, like last year, we had more Apple PCs with viruses on them than Windows PCs.
Really? Wow.
Yep. And quite bad ones. But again, the problem is Mac will just go, it's old laptops, they're not supported. Your problem.
That is a problem with the Apple ecosystem, and they were very aggressive they have been very aggressive in the recent past in ending support for Intel-based Macs. And we know why they're doing that, because they want to push people onto the Apple Silicon, and they want to end their support for Intel machines as fast as they can. But some recent machines that were only 4 or 5 years old have reached the end of life.
Yeah. Now, again, that's one of those. If you listen to the previous podcast, certain people can get away with certain things, and other companies can't. Apple can get away with it for some reason. Windows can't. There's a heavy double standard there between the two operating system guys.
Well, Windows is in business, and we know that Windows machines in business last for 10 years.
Yeah, it's long. But the problem is like for consumer and so forth, even for business, they work in 3-year cycles. If you've got a contract, Coca-Cola, all these big guys, they work in 3-year cycles. So for Windows can do it easily. The problem is they would be a royal, like, screw you, Windows, you cannot see how much bullcrap Windows got for changing the limits for Windows 11. Mac does it. Oh, that's okay.
Yes, there was outrage about the security chips and stuff.
Exactly. The fact that Windows says from 8th gen and up for Intel and AMD Zen 2 and up. So then everybody grabs, and then if Apple does exactly the same thing, all of a sudden, you small complaints and then nothing really.
And Microsoft backed down in some respects. Kind of backed down.
But it's
Apple
still
says, well, tough luck.
Yes, no. So Apple has in my opinion, the better attitude. Just make it. That is the law. That's how it goes. Get over it.
Yeah.
Have your complaints, and there you go. But again, from the people, I get this very double standard issue where one company gets treated one way and the other company, it's fine. So Apple, again, to their credit, they can get away with it. Yeah. So good for you. Happy.
And what's nice is on those old Intel Macs, it's pretty easy to install Linux if it is the end of life and you don't want to.
The Linux community made that quite easy.
Yeah.
They did break their backs to get that working and so forth. Yeah. Apple did not help them at all.
Much more difficult, I suspect, to get it on the M1 Silicon.
Oh, yes. Now, I think there's a couple of guys trying to get that
I'll get
working.
there.
I think they already have some experimental OSs already open and so forth. I don't think if all the features work and the performance is like 100%, but yeah,
I'll get there.
They will find a way. They are determined guys, and I'll take my hat off to them.
Eventually, this machine, once it's no longer supported by Apple, but I suspect because it's the new Apple Silicon, it will be supported for a longer period.
Well, I think there would be I would hope that the Apple community as greater would push Apple to actually make it more easier to do that for Linux developers and open source and so forth.
Yeah.
I do hope they actually get that done.
Can't see it happening though.
Again, they've started to change their attitude with repairs and so forth. Again, ham-fisted implementation as is, but if there's enough people bitching and moaning, eventually something can happen with Apple.
They don't support Windows on these machines. You can't install Windows like you used to be able to.
It's one of their pointers. That's not their job. Their job is to make sure their OS works on it. So
they developed Boot Camp for Intel machines.
Well, that again was due to them one nefarious reason, because they kind of like it's Intel. It should be able to run Windows. So you can't really say you can't. Yeah. With Windows a custom, it's like trying to say, but why can't you install Windows on your phone? Mm-hmm. You see, that's the problem. They're taking that idea from phones. Again, Apple can get away with stuff that other people can't. They can take that and lock it, and nobody really bitches and moans that greatly.
What's really funny is I actually know quite a few people who used the old MacBook Airs running Windows 10, and that was their OS. They didn't use macOS. They bought the Apple hardware because they liked the hardware and the reliability of it, and they installed Windows 10 on it, and Windows 10 was what they used.
Now, again, Apple side, they don't want you to do that because they want you to go iTunes. They want you to go to the store. Store is what sells the laptop. The ecosystem, shall I rather say, sells the whole platform. So that's the whole operating system is based on the actual store, iTunes, having everything run through Apple's interface and how they use it. Yeah. So
they definitely want to do that, but they still allow you to sideload apps on macOS like you can on Windows.
Again, there would be massive if they don't. But majority of the user base that use Apple will go through the iStore. Yeah, that's just a fact. That's how it's going to work. Again, some people have now completely gone into that ecosystem and they are locked into it now. I think we will probably see in the future some lawsuits and so forth coming with people saying, no, but you can't do this because that's not fair, and you can't, trying to get out of the ecosystem, especially Apple, makes that very difficult to get out and so forth. So it's only a few people that can now manage between two operating systems and use them at the same time.
Yeah.
So that's...
Yeah, so I've wrote down, I'm not going to go into any sort of detail on this. I just wrote down a few things that I like about macOS and things I don't like about macOS. Things I like the dock. I think it's pretty. I just love what they've done with it and the magnification, etc. And I know it's silly. It's been around for years.
Yeah.
But it defines the dock, that magnification on the dock really defines the operating system.
Yes. No, it's
the first thing as a user that you notice is this is very different to Windows.
Yeah, no, the advantage with Mac is their main sell point with their OS for me was in the early days was to professional people, to video editors, audio editors, audio engineers, all that type of jazz. Because their stuff was way more reliable in the early days versus Windows. It was just a fact. You cannot deny that fact. That's why a lot of the audio guys went to Mac. That's why FireWire was such a big thing with Mac in the early days.
And there were apps that ran on Mac and did not run on Windows.
Yes, no,
for the creative professionals.
Yes, no, that's and you can still see those like remnants left over with Final Cut Pro and so forth, which were amazing piece of software and actually competed with Adobe, like literally feature for feature parity there at some points. I think Adobe actually moved a bit further on and so forth, but you can also see Adobe came out, and I think Apple did their own thing.
Adobe was very much a Mac company in the early days. They pivoted to Windows later.
Well, the Windows thing.
Photoshop was really a Mac app.
Yeah, it was. But then I think what happened is because Final Cut Pro came out and all those things, they felt like Apple's like turning against them somehow. Because again, it's like we kind of helped you, and then Apple did the Apple thing by like, okay, no, we'll just make the same app and just sell it on our own name and make it more better than yours.
Adobe apps are now first-class citizens on Windows. They didn't used to be.
I wouldn't really say first class. They still crash a lot, and I get a lot of customers complaining about Adobe on every platform, whether it's be Apple or on PC. They still randomly crash. They are still a bit Adobe-ish. That's all you can say there. But yeah, the Apple
But they crash on Mac too. So
yes, no, the Apple UI in terms of how you use it and so forth, for certain people is amazing. So I have some of my doctors which only use Apple, because they use that with their X-ray machines or something like that. And you get software that only works with Apple. I didn't know that a couple of years ago. I was like, seriously, the software only works on Mac. So you had to buy Mac all-in-one PC or what?
There's quite a bit of software actually that only runs on Mac. Some quite good software as well. I mean, there's Ecamm, which is a live streaming package.
Yes.
Brilliant streaming package. Only runs on Mac.
Yeah. So I thought it was like Mac has its advantages when it focuses quite aggressively in one area specifically.
Yeah.
And they get the right people. So that's it. The only disadvantage is they have to have the right people for that to work. They don't really go out and actually, again, they don't really innovate. That's the problem with Apple. Apple's good at taking other people's ideas and saying, oh, okay, you should have done it this way. So that's Apple's specialty is like literally seeing the potential in other products.
Which is what the iPhone app by definition was.
Yeah.
Steve Jobs looked at the BlackBerry, he looked at the Nokia phones, he said, this is not how you should be doing it, guys. No. This is how you should be doing.
Yeah, that's
where the genius of Jobs really came in. He saw the potential of these products to create something different that would capture the imagination of consumers.
Yeah, no, that's what that's Apple's main focus and should still be, in my opinion. That's why even with the CPUs, is you could see them seeing it's like, we make our own phones, we have all this development in it, let's push it. So that's for hardware aspect. In the OS side, I'm still struggling. I always struggle to use macOS for some reason. I don't know why. For me, I don't know. It's easier for me to use Linux than actual Apple for some reason. And I presume it's just because how I interact with the machine.
Not used to it, I suppose.
It's that, and it's also
a bit like learning to ride a bicycle.
And so forth. So yes, there's like there's obvious stuff that I'm like, okay, the problem is because I'm so used to Windows that inherently will make me more biased. And the way I use my machine and how a Mac user will use their machine is completely different as well. Because Mac wants you to go in the ecosystem. So even the operating system is very linked to the ecosystem. So how you share documents, how you keep your documents, that's iCloud, all those things are all integrated to your photos and everything. So that's the problem with Apple. As I tell customers that buy Apple.
To be fair, Windows does the same or tries to.
But it's not the same.
OneDrive comes with Windows.
Yeah,
kind
but
of pushes you in that
same.
direction. It tries to push you to use Microsoft Edge.
It's not the same implementation because Mac's implementation it's one of those things where I told customers where I've had a couple of customers where I've had people go into Mac and not liking it at all, and I've had other people who's like, dude, if you're going into Mac, it's normally if it's easier if you've got a phone or some exposure to Apple already with their ecosystem. Because then it's like, it's easy then to get sucked into the ecosystem. And sometimes the ecosystem works brilliantly for some people. It just works, and that's what they like. It just works. It never gives no crap. It doesn't bug out or anything like that. It's easy to use with the whole family. If all the family members use it. Again, Apple does this in a specific reason because they want everyone to be Mac and stuck on Mac, and you always buy Mac every 3 years because that's what Mac wants you to do.
Yeah.
So that's the advantage there, is to sell. They always sell their hardware as a way for you to use their software. So that's key difference from any of the other manufacturers. Even with the phone guys, they sell you the phone. The software is not really their division. They try and change the skin and so forth. But Mac's main thing is always we need to sell the hardware that works with our software. That's why I tell people Apple's becoming this weird monster where they are a software company first and foremost, and then a hardware company, because they have now so encroached and embedded themselves in getting people in their ecosystem. They now need to focus and maintain that ecosystem, which probably costs them a lot of money to run iTunes, all the phone things, and all the podcast apps that they have. Again, they make a lot of money from that as well. People paying 30% from every transaction on iTunes and any of their platforms they take.
It's a walled garden. We all know that it's a walled garden. Once you get in that walled garden, it is quite difficult to get out. You can get out, but it is difficult to get out.
Yeah, no,
what I find interesting, though, is that those walls are getting higher and higher from the outside. I mean, if you look at the price of the iPhone now, I'm sure the Rand has impacted it in South Africa.
Yes, I know.
20% hike on the iPhone 14 prices. But, the price has been ramping up and up, and on the iPhone, the cost of Macs has been going up. They're actually making it more difficult to get into the ecosystem in the first place.
Well, they don't want poor people.
No.
Unfortunately, I tell people straight, like Apple doesn't want poor people.
That's true.
Poor people don't make money.
That's true.
So
they're not interested in the low end.
No. They've seen the laptop market. They've seen what they want their margin. Even their laptop hardware makes stupid amount of profit.
Yeah.
Versus other brands that give you way more features or something like that, or in it, flipbook with the touch. Even my laptop, I think my laptop is now selling for about 11 to 12 grand for my laptop. It's a touchscreen, IPS panel. It flips. There's a touchscreen. Comes with a 6-core processor, with a pen and everything. Apple, you buy a laptop, and the laptop's what's the cheapest version of a laptop from Apple now? It's like 20 something grand.
Yeah, at least. Yeah.
So it's like the margins that they make on their laptop hardware units is stupendous. It's like stupendous money making scheme there, which is a bit disgusting in one sense, because you're like, whoa, you're overpriced heavily, and people just tend to buying it.
Well, if consumers are prepared to pay for it,
the problem is
this is a free market.
It is a free market, but that does have implications later on, which I think that's gonna, especially now that if we're going into a recession, that's gonna probably hit them hard, because they're over reliant on milking customers. And I don't think that's,
I mean, is it the wealthier end of the market that gets hit the hardest when there is a recession? I'd argue that possibly not.
Not as much, but the problem is it will hit hardware sales. People will hold their hardware longer, because again, software makes you more money, because people are willing to pay more for software than hardware. It's just a fact, unfortunately. People are willing. It depends on the client and so forth, because even my clients and some of my doctors and so forth, I've had now, 4 doctors buy laptops, and they were kind of looking at buying that, and then they just looked, oh, but I can buy a Windows PC for a bit cheaper, and it gives me more features, and it's all that features. I'm like, okay, now I'll buy that. So Apple could have got customers, but because they went and priced their product so high, they lost doctors. So there is a point where even rich people that have money won't buy your product. So Apple needs to be very careful in the future how they price their products, especially I think in other territories. I think they're getting to a point where it's a bit of a cheat, because it's the only countries that don't get affected is America and China. And the only reason they don't get is because you've got unit sales just make up for it. And again, more competition apparently is that they'll actually honestly say it's like, oh, you can't do it because then competition. Like, and then third world countries and everyone else, oh no, well, we'll just charge the third world countries and everyone, all the other countries, whether it's Europe and so forth, will up their price and try and use their price to amortize the price for the Americans and the Chinese then. So, which is kind of a bad move in my opinion. That's like really being a bit of a prick. Again, that goes with all of the companies. So we can't just say, oh, it's just Apple. They all do this way. It's Intel. AMD will probably do the same. Yeah. But
so it's very pretty. I like the look of it. And that appeals to a lot of consumers. Everything basically just works. Basically, there's some issues, but it's pretty stable. Rosetta. It works well. Apps work. You can get the apps you want. You can generally find the drivers you need to plug in a printer or a scanner.
The basics.
The basics work.
The basics for what customers use, because most
and you
of the
don't have to hack it.
Yeah, well, most of the stuff. The thing that help Apple there as well is everything just became client side.
Yeah,
browser based. If you've got a browser, if you can use a browser, you can use it.
But you can get Office, you can get, everything. The apps you expect
Microsoft
to be able
makes
to use.
an Office. Most of the features that 99% of the users want, I would say probably even 100% of the users need, will work on Apple.
Yeah.
So that's what, again, the advantage with time and so forth. As things now got more complex, they got more simple, it's easier to implement. The fact that everything became browser-based just helped them even more.
Yeah.
Because then it's just easier to swap. So people will just buy a cheap MacBook Air and so forth because they want to be freaking posh or something, because Apple is the image product buying.
It is.
People buy Apple for image. So they do that, and they can still do
not
their
entirely,
work and so forth.
Not entirely,
but a good portion, especially in third world countries. It is very image-based.
Yeah.
Coming from a person that sells laptops.
And in America, it's very image-based.
Yeah, no, it's very image-based.
So
that's
especially the phones.
I'll give Apple credit for they have done good work with getting, especially when they had the Intel laptops, making their products a bit more niche and unique in terms of how the OS is used, and in terms of reliability for certain products and certain software packages and so forth. They've improved that considerably. So
one criticism I do have is in package management. The Mac does not do that well. Windows is far superior in installing and uninstalling apps. When you install an app on here, it uses different package management software depending on the app. And I know that's very similar to Linux and the Unix underpins that it comes from.
Yes.
But it's irritating. I really would like to have one place where I can see what apps I have installed and uninstall them easily. as it stands, it's difficult to uninstall an app cleanly on macOS. You need to. I actually run a special program here called App Cleaner, which checks all the dependencies and makes sure that actually when it's uninstalling the app, it's removing everything. Because often when you just drag an app out of the applications folder into the trash, which is how you're generally supposed to uninstall apps on macOS, though not always, it doesn't always delete everything, and you end up with a bit of a mess left behind, which is not great. Windows does it far better. You go into the control panel, you go into the app manager, you uninstall an app, and it's gone.
Well, it's
generally speaking,
majority of it gone and so forth. So that is a crux of Linux, that you can say that they have that package. I think Linux actually has proper uninstall tools now that you can actually literally, you can through it even as far as I understand through terminal, you can literally go. I think even Windows is starting to roll that out where you actually have you can run from terminal from Windows, and you can say, should get this program, install this program, and so forth, and installs it. So Linux
and again, if you're experienced and you know your way around a Linux command line, running apps and using package managers is simple. No, but for your average user who doesn't want to go to the command line,
which are more GUI based.
Exactly.
So most people that come from Windows are GUI based.
Yeah.
Now Mac also got themselves on the foot there because they made their stuff also GUI based. They're one of the first Linuxes that actually have GUI based.
They were there before Windows. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. They're GUI based, but they've mainly pivot their user in base also to be, you don't do any of the programming stuff. It should be all easy and clean and all that type of jazz. So I think that's where inherently you can get some problems. Is trying to be so clean and all that jazz can bring up some problems with being.
No, I think Apple needs to do a better job of app management on macOS. They just need to do it better. There's an app called App Cleaner. If you're running a Mac, and you're not using App Cleaner, do yourself a favor, download it from the store or from the website. You can download it both places, and install and use it. It's free. It's a free app, and all you do is you drag the icon out of the applications folder onto the App Cleaner icon, and it does everything for you. That should be how it works on Mac, and it isn't right now.
Yeah, no, there's all operating systems will need. Again, there's always place for improvement. Software is always either you're in development or it's abandoned.
Yeah,
that's how software works. From what I can understand from all my software developers that I've spoken to, it's like either it's abandoned or it's actually in active development. It's the two.
Now, my biggest criticism of macOS, and it's not just a criticism of Mac, but it's a criticism of Apple more broadly, and it is their business strategy, and they're not going to change it. And if you're going to go Apple, suck it up. Basically, you have to, and that's the walled garden. And we saw this so clearly in the last few weeks when Tim Cook was on a stage or talking to a journalist and was asked, it was Kara Swisher at the Recode conference, specifically asked about whether Apple will embrace RCS, which is the communications protocol that Google uses for its chat applications, and Google's been putting a lot of pressure on Apple to embrace RCS.
Yeah.
Because at the moment, and I don't use an iPhone, but and it's not that popular in South Africa, but in the US, FaceTime is extremely popular. Or is it? No, sorry, not FaceTime. iMessage. It's a very popular chat tool. Now, when you send a message to someone on iMessage to a Google user, they'll get it as an SMS. And Apple's kind of created this situation, almost call it like an apartheid type situation where you get green bubbles and blue bubbles appearing in iMessage. And if it's a blue bubble, it's someone on, I think it's a blue bubble, someone is on Android or some other device. And the easy way around this, the solution to this, is simply for Apple to adopt real RCS, which I think stands for Real-Time Communication System or something. And that would resolve the problem. That would allow communication between iMessage and Google's messaging apps. But they don't do this. They haven't embraced RCS, even though it would be a fairly simple thing to do. And Tim Cook was asked by Kara Swisher at this conference, why haven't you adopted RCS? Do you have any plans to implement RCS on iMessage? And Tim Cook's response, the question was about, I'd like my grandmother or my mother to be able to communicate using iMessage with non-Apple users. Or she'd like to be able to communicate with her grandmother. I forget the exact
siblings
details.
And so forth.
Something like that. And Tim Cook's response was, buy her an iPhone.
Yeah.
That's arrogant.
It's always ecosystem. They want to sell you the ecosystem.
Yeah. That's protecting the walled garden.
Yeah.
That's anti-consumer.
Well, that's
Apple.
No company is for the consumer. That's what people need to understand. Don't ever try and hype a product up. Whether it be AMD, Nvidia, any company, Google, Apple, any company. They are not your
they're
friend.
looking after their shareholders.
The only people that is interested is the major stake shareholders. I wouldn't even say all shareholders, just the major stake shareholders and the people on the top.
And the share price. Yeah.
So that's the only people, because some of these companies are willing to screw over their shareholders if they want to.
But very often, doing things right by consumers is good for the shareholder. And surely in this particular case, I mean, what is Apple so scared of? Why will they not open this up? Are they so scared that they're going to lose market share because now you can send messages from Android to iMessage?
You need to, okay. So I tell people, this is the funny story with Apple. Apple is a tyrant. They like dictators. Sometimes they do stupid stuff because they're tyrants.
And this is certainly an example of that.
This is one of those cases where they're a tyrant. They now feel like you've now come. He might have felt that someone's coming across to him quite aggressively, and he's just like throwing his toys out of the cot and saying, no, just buy a freaking iPhone and then it's problem solved. Why are you not doing what I'm telling you to do? You see that arrogance quickly coming through, like tyranny motion coming through from Apple.
Yeah.
You see that. So normally when companies get to that point and so forth, and again, Microsoft has been there and they've also actually fallen down from that.
That's what happens.
Apple's now coming to that point where they're getting to that tyranny again, where they were previously with Steve Jobs, and then Steve Jobs got cut and then dropped because, again, all companies tend to have this follow-up where they go to tyranny.
Microsoft did that too.
Oh, yes, and then they got cut.
Yeah.
Then,
so is Apple heading towards a cliff?
Oh, yes. All companies fail eventually.
Because they're anti-consumer?
Because they tend to be they think like dictators.
They're anti-consumer.
Well, it's anti-consumer
because you're not giving the consumer the choice.
Well, it's not a bit. It's like if they are for the consumer that buys their product.
Yeah.
They don't really care about the people that don't buy their products. That's their way of thinking. They are thinking very like a dictator. You are in my group. My group is better than your group.
Yeah.
Join my group because my group's better than your group.
Yeah. It's tribal.
It's all companies do that. All people do that. They have.
But at the end of the day, it's not good for their customers.
Yeah, but they don't care. That's the problem.
If you're an Apple user, it's not good for you as an Apple user.
But that's not. That's how they. That's why I tell people tyrants sometimes do stupid stuff. That's why they go out of power eventually. You can follow all dictators, and they all do the same stupid stuff. They could have stayed in power if they just did simple things. Whether it be Stalin, whether it be Hitler, whether it be all of these.
Or the Holy Roman Empire.
Exactly. All of them will always fail because they tend to be overconfident. And then overconfidence always gets them. Whether it's Intel had that hard lesson now. They're now in the dumps. Microsoft had the same thing happen to them as well.
Yeah.
They're now getting, I must say, Microsoft is actually covering quite better than I expected, actually. Microsoft is becoming way more consumer friendly. I don't know if it's due to them feeling that they must be more consumer friendly. I don't know, because they're becoming way better with repairing type of stuff. The operating systems are getting better. The software type of stuff is getting better. They're being more a chilled company.
Yeah.
The vibe I'm getting from Microsoft.
It's because they realize that doing so is good for consumers, and being good to consumers is ultimately good for business.
It's not necessarily, because again, like, how much money do you think Microsoft puts into accessibility? How much of that money do they actually really?
Well, it'll be a tiny fraction of their R&D budget.
But they still do it because it's the better thing to do.
Yeah.
So they're not being hassles.
Yeah.
So sometimes
integrating RCS into iMessage is the right thing by consumers to do.
So that's what I believe. It is the right thing to do, but they won't do it because, again, they're
trying to protect an install base, which is ultimately
they're trying to protect their fan base.
Yeah.
That's why they want to sell the hardware and they want to sell the ecosystem. They did that, it allows other people to get into their ecosystem. That's not going to benefit from their product, which they don't want to do. If I'm not going to make money from you.
Because Android is the enemy. So Apple has the same mindset that Microsoft had about Linux 20 years ago.
Yeah. It's very now, again, because they're getting so successful and they're gaining the money, that tyrannic thoughts also come up eventually.
Now Android is the enemy.
Well, it's anybody that's not us.
Yeah.
So it's not,
which is exactly the approach Microsoft had.
Yes. So that's what people like. All of those big companies, when they get that big, they all make the same mistakes. Always, like textbook. Yeah. You can literally follow. They all
write an MBA on this. Yeah.
It's like you don't need to. You literally just go to the history and say, they're going to do this. And that's why I tell people Apple will now have the peak of that they'll have with chips and so forth. And you'll see now with M2. I don't know how big the M3s and so forth will integrate, but I think once that cocky attitude starts to hit more people, they're going to start losing higher people if they continue with their arrogant attitude. they'll start losing people in the back end that you won't see. And that's normally when you go and look at people's LinkedIn posts and so forth. I've worked at Apple now, left Apple, because again, that's also where they're going to hit that point. Is a lot of their old engineers and so forth are people that you could see steal or just got from other companies that they've and these guys are now all in their 50s and 60s. They're getting close to retirement age, and they've probably having enough money that they can leave. So they will have a bit of a brain drain in the coming, probably in the next 4 years. You'll see a bit of a brain drain from Apple dropping a bit. So I'm very curious to see how that affects them later on, because that's their whole problem with Apple, with their ecosystem and so forth, that they need to work in integrating, and they don't want to sell value options. They have a very specific customer that they want. And if they don't get that customer, then they just throw the toys out and say, go away. We don't want you. And
so I want to get your views on Mac now. So I'm just looking at the show notes here. The first point you've got is a very valid one. PCs are repairable. If you want to, I've had this experience before. I used to use a Mac many years ago.
Yeah.
And I was at a lunch meeting, and my guest knocked a beer over the keyboard. A few drops, or over on the table, a few drops went into the keyboard, and the screen went black. So I took it into Apple locally, and or their local reseller. And I said, I don't know what's happened here, but please can you have a look at it? And they come back to me 24 hours later, and they said, we've had a look at it. We need to replace the logic board, which I think they say to all the customers. Yes. And they gave me a quote. The quote for replacing the logic board on the MacBook was more expensive than buying a brand new machine.
Yeah, no, there's stupid reasons for that, and that's across all brands. So I tell people in South Africa, or most of, depending on what country you are and so forth, if you buy an Asus or HP laptop and so forth, the motherboard cost will always be more than what the laptop is.
Oh, so it's not just a uniquely Apple thing. Okay.
No. For South Africa, the reason for that is because it's a pre-assembled part that they order specially for you. The taxation kills it in South Africa. They're getting massive taxation on it. That's what's.
So is the tax higher than on a fully built computer?
Oh, yes. That's why with TVs, that's why the people they see a small description. So quick side note. So with TVs, that's why TVs are so much cheaper than monitors. Mm-hmm. It's because the TVs actually get assembled in South Africa.
Okay.
I actually spoke to one of the LG guys and so forth. They actually now make the PCBs even in South Africa now to get saving more costs on TV production, because the plastics would be molded in South Africa. So that's why I tell people, even with Dell, they do it here. That's normally I tell people, where sometimes people will bring a Dell screen or something from somewhere else and then bring it here. And it's like, but the Dell plastic here in South Africa is not the same as the Dell. I'm like, yeah, because it's made in South Africa. The plastic is actually molded here. So it will actually look different. And then one guy's like, oh, but it doesn't look as good, well made. And it's like, well, don't know if that's just you got a bad one, or maybe South Africa is not as tight freaking regulations with that. But that brings cost down significantly with South Africa if you assemble the part in South Africa. So if the motherboard vendors actually, all the big guys like Dell and HP actually repaired stuff here locally in South Africa, where they did logic boards and they can actually assemble the stuff here, you can actually bring pricing down for laptops considerably. But they don't. So that's why that's why you get stupid stuff like that. But the repairs with Apple is because they don't make their parts now, especially with making stuff more complicated. Now, because Apple now with the M1 chip, everything is soldered to the board. So if the board gets damaged, everything is gone. Which is kind of, we can argue a point of e-waste, because that is very bad actually. So having that's why we see now a more of a repair approach from Apple now.
They're talking about making them more repairable, yes. That you could do it yourself.
Yes, but
kind of.
But you have
to buy the toolkit from Apple.
Yes, yeah. So you see now how they want this whole ecosystem becomes to bite them in the ass, because you the phones I think is a bit easier because you can replace the screen and so forth. The laptops are a bit trickier than phones. Again, phones are also ass, but that you can take your corner shop dude and he knows how to open it and he has heating tools and all that jazz and you can open it up and so forth. But the main problem is it's with laptops and so forth, replacing the cracked screen on an Apple device is more of a than opening it on a freaking. I've done. Actually, I tell people, funny enough now, especially since COVID hit, our repairs have increased. I think when I looked at the stats, probably close to, I would say, probably close to 100% increase in repairs.
So people are not buying new because they want to just keep the computers for
longer. And it's because, I will give kudos to now. It's to Asus mainly. Asus and MSI and Acer getting parts for them, very cheap in South Africa. I'm actually amazed. It's like if you break a hinge for Asus and HP and so forth, you're looking about what for me to get the hinges, you're gonna pay more in labor than what the part is worth. Actually, funny enough, which that was normally not the case. So, like hinges are cheap. So, repairability. I wish Apple had the same facility that I can say that we can replicate currently with like some of the vendors we have, where I can send them the serial number and say, I'm looking for this and this and part, and order it, ship it over 4 or 5 weeks, whatever, how long it takes to claim to get here. Customer can bring the Apple here, I can repair it, and open that to any customer, to any repair shop. Not saying, oh no, you have to be authorized or you have to jump through these hoops because this and security. Ignore all that. Make it easy for small repair shops to actually repair your products. Because it can be basic stuff like replacing the screen. That's easy. You can still replace that. Replace the keyboard. That can still be easy. Unfortunately, most of the keyboards now, the keyboard and the chassis at the top is actually one piece. It's actually plastic welded.
I've actually seen some very brave YouTubers who, when the original M1 MacBook Pros came out, they ordered them and they got the first thing they did, basically before even switching the thing on, was they got their special screwdriver kits, and they opened them up to have a look inside of them for the benefit of YouTube viewers. It's very brave. I mean, these machines they bought for their use. The first thing they do is open it up, look at the repairability. You're right. It's basically one logic board inside now.
Yeah, it's all one piece, which has
But opening up they're actually quite well-built machines.
No, Apple's always been fairly decent with their manufacturing and so forth. Their tolerances are very accurate. So that's the main problem with Apple fell apart, is just making it easy to repair. The fact that you had to go to the Apple repair center where they rip they rip you. I know what the cost is. I know what the cost is of the screen. It's not that expensive.
Yeah, no, they do.
So there's that's my problem. The labor is expensive, yes, but it cannot be that expensive. And if they democratize that a bit easier for other repairs,
which they're doing, kudos to them, but bit by bit.
Not as easy as I would say if they can copy what other manufacturers have done.
Sure.
I can literally, I tell people with Asus, it's this easy. And they're very quick. I'll take my hat off to Asus and so forth. I can literally get a serial number, send it to them. Literally in 2 hours, they'll get back to me and say, here's the part, this is how much it is. I don't need to go and fish it. I literally just give them the serial number. They can tell me here's the part. I can order the part. 4 weeks later, it's here.
Lots of transparency in the supply chain. Yeah.
Exactly. It's not that difficult. It shouldn't be that difficult, especially Apple that has such a tight control on there's the whole freaking
well, that's the problem, is they have this innate urge to control everything, and that's why it's so difficult to repair.
They can open their own service center type of thing where people can just submit the serial number and say these are the parts that they need, and they ship it to you. It's not that difficult, Apple.
They're doing it now.
That's my problem. Now there's some education, because some of them, especially Apple, loves to glue stuff, and the new stuff also likes to glue stuff, so that's a bit of a pain.
Yeah.
And people will probably break stuff when they try and install it because they're new and novice for it. That's why it's important to actually have tech stores being able to do that.
Yeah.
Not helping the customer to try and get the customer to repair their own thing.
No, but that's what this is about. It's not Apple. This is why Apple's opening it up. It's not for Joe Blogs to fix his own MacBook. It's so you could take it to someone other than a Mac.
The problem is they trying and profiteer from it, which you shouldn't. You shouldn't try and profiteer from repairs. And that's my problem with Apple. Is they're trying to milk it. It's like, how can we milk this? And that's like, come on, man.
This is Apple.
It is Apple, but
we know they do this.
That's now again being a bit of a dictator. So that's my problem with Apple. We know how to do it properly. It's just they're not willing to do it properly because there's ulterior motives behind it. So I wish Apple would do that for repairs. So that's one thing I'll ask them to do for repairs.
What else would you like to see them do better? I mean, what's you're a PC, you're a Windows user.
Mainly,
you look at this remotely. What do you think?
I would be interested for Mac to get more into the gaming thing. It's weird that more hardcore PC gaming. They're in the mobile gaming scene big, but it's mainly just profiteering
Apple
from
Arcade. It's subscription.
Arcade, but it's mainly profiteering.
It's quite expensive, actually. 85 Rand a month.
And then they divide that. It's like a bad implementation of Xbox Game Pass. In my opinion, it's a very bad implementation of it. Because it's not really bringing anything really great to the platform.
Mac games are getting better. I mean, you get Steam on Mac now, and I noticed that a lot of the games, I'd say probably 40 or 50% of games in Steam will run on the Mac.
Yeah, but it's terrible. It runs trash. That's the problem. It's the
Even on
optimization.
GPUs, I haven't played with it.
Even on the GPUs, very bad frame pacing, all that type of jazz. So there needs to be a better, and I can understand the problem, because the problem is now you've got this whole unique operating system, and they've got Metal that you need to program for. So now you're asking the developer, okay, hey, the game developer, you need to support Windows, you need to support possibly now Linux that's coming out with Steam, and then Mac
and console.
and in the consoles, and then that's 2 technically. So that's 5 different platforms that you now have to literally code for directly, because they all have literally their own APIs. At least with Xbox, it's kind of similar to DirectX, so there's some overlay there, but it's not exactly the same. And then you've got Sony there, then you've got Valve with Linux.
And people don't buy Mac to play games chiefly. They don't.
Well,
it's not what they purchase.
The problem is the hardware is there.
It
So
is.
it's like untapped potential. It's just Mac doesn't care.
Yeah,
they just go.
The GPUs on the Apple Silicon
games.
are actually very good from what I've seen on paper.
There's a lot of potential. I don't know how good it actually is, but there's a lot of potential. We haven't seen a game really push what that Silicon can do. But the problem is now you're going to go do all that effort to program just for Apple, and then how many Apple users actually buy?
Yeah.
That's
But
now.
I've put a couple of 3D shooters on here. I put the new Lara Croft game on here, and that ran beautifully well.
Yeah, no, it's like 60. The problem is, like, for the amount of hardware that's in there, it should be way quicker. So that's the main critique. Is like it's good, it's okay-ish, but then, like, how many strategy games can you play on it? Can you play Red Alert? No. So any old game that you want to play, you're screwed. So even the newer games, how out of all of them, can you play Spider-Man? No.
Don't know. Not sure.
That just came out. That doesn't work on Apple, as far as I know. That's the main thing. So there's going to be a lot of games that's going to come out, and it's just not going to work on Apple, because Apple's not thought of as a gaming brand. And I don't think it would be interesting to see if they can do research and see how many of the Apple users are willing to buy PC games or buy the traditional PC game. But I think the main headache there for Apple is they want to try and force those game developers to sell it through iTunes. And the game developer says,
take the 30% cut.
No.
Yeah.
We already have to deal with Sony and Microsoft.
Yeah.
And they already both take 30%. And they actually work for that 30%.
Yeah.
They'll actually actively help you make your game work on their console.
Yeah.
Apple just says...
But they don't take 30%. They take much less.
No.
Microsoft takes 12% on Xbox, doesn't it?
No, it's 30%.
Is it 30?
Yeah, 30%. Sony and Microsoft, they take 30% of... That's why console games are so expensive.
I thought it was 12%.
No. 12% is for, I think, for the new store stuff and so forth. Because remember, Apple... The advantage with Sony and Microsoft, why you pay that 30, is they do marketing stuff. They actually test your software for you.
Yeah.
They actually, like, there's back-end stuff that they do a lot. They actually give you all technical specifications. You can talk to their hardware division guys directly. Apple ain't going to do that. So they take 30% but give you nothing.
Yeah.
So what are you paying for them? To be on your platform. Like, well, hey, you're not giving us anything back, though. So that's, I think, their point of view from the game developers. Again, I'm assuming I have no insight, or I've actually not really spoken to guys and actually asked their opinions on this. So I'm just going from layman's term, from me thinking out of my head quickly, thinking, oh, where's potential problems I can see from Apple?
Yeah.
Where I think Apple needs to spend money in saying, sweet, even if you say, even I would say, even for Apple, if Apple takes 30%, justify that 30%. Don't just say, oh, we take 30% because they've always done. Justify it. Why is it 30%? If you actually can tell the consumer, hey, we're doing all of this, and we're actually working with developers, we're doing it. They're not, that 30% is actually used. It's just not just free money that's just going into the coffers, and then we'll spend it on whatever the hell we want, or we'll just give it to the shareholders. Goodbye, even you loyal customer that buys from us. Screw you. Our investors is more important than you as a consumer. That's my problem. So tell me where that money is going. Why do you need 30%? And that's why I think more companies, especially the Europeans, I think the European is, you're going to start seeing them target Apple for that 30% cut, because it's like, this is unjustified. You don't, where does that money go to?
So I'm having a look in Steam on macOS here, and I just out of interest looking at some of the bigger titles and seeing if they're available to run on. And these are not necessarily all the latest titles. Some of these are the old games, but I'm just going to go through them very quickly. Maybe pick 10. Alan Wake, Windows only.
Whoopee, that's ancient, but
a lot of these games are ancient. Alien Isolation will run on Mac. American Truck Simulator will run on Mac.
Yeah, okay. Well.
Among the Sleep will run on Mac. BioShock Infinite will run on Mac.
That's not great, though. That's, as far as I remember, there's a lot of complaints with that on Mac.
Just having a look at other major titles here. Some of these are really old. Doom, Windows only. Dying Light will run on Mac. Elder Scrolls Online will run on Mac. Let me just go through this list quickly. Leisure Suit Larry will run on Mac.
Well, there's point-and-click adventure game. Does Monkey Island actually work on it?
Monkey Island.
Let's check Monkey Island.
Monkey Island 2, available for Windows only.
Oh,
ouch.
Womp.
Ouch.
Womp,
That should run easily on here.
Yes, no, man, it's point-and-click, man. It's like freaking glorified freaking
Quantum Break, Windows only.
It's quite old titles. So it's all old titles that are...
No, these are my titles in Steam. So,
that you've bought and
these
so
are
forth.
games I actually own. Which I bought on Windows, and so I'm just seeing whether they run on Mac.
I know it's growing, but it's growing really too slowly, in my opinion. For such a domineering market and OEM vendor, for Apple to just go completely ignore it is, in my opinion, a bad...
X-Plane will run on Mac. That's nice.
Again, there's a lot of Mac guys. I think that I can understand because the developers, there's a lot of pilots and so forth will have that. So that's the problem. The developer has to go out of their way to support Mac. Which is stupid because Apple is stupidly rich. They can flock easily a couple of $20 million or something dollars and so forth a year and say, sweet, here's a couple of developers. They'd start. If AMD can afford it, hell, Apple can afford it. Like, seriously, guys.
Yeah.
Like, it's like AMD
so
can do this.
Games, big criticism. Repairability. What when you, as a PC user, look at the Mac world, what would you say Apple is doing right that the PC world should be copying?
I would say the main fact there is, I would say that's more to Windows. Hardware, okay, so let's break it down to between software and hardware.
Sure.
So for hardware, I would say hardware, the guys are getting put to a point where it's very equal. The advantage is with what I would want more companies to do is to look at the aesthetics of Apple. Really look at the hinge quality and so forth. Main problem is for the other companies, it's quite expensive to copy Apple with that type of stuff because they innovate and they spend a lot of engineering money to get that done.
And expensive.
But I wish that lifts the price of the laptop up and so forth. But like if you look like touchpad sensitivity and so forth, there is companies coming up now to try and compete with Apple in that touchpad and so forth. So
I have never come across a Windows PC that has a trackpad as large and as good as the Macs.
So there is one. They're getting better now. You'll start seeing most of the laptop PCs will actually have more big trackpads because the companies that make those trackpads have become better. Most of these hardware companies don't make the trackpads; they buy it from someone else. Sure. So that company needs to innovate before it actually works here, and they need to get the money to innovate. Yeah. So Apple, their advantage is it's money, their own money they're spending. So I wish PC spends more time actually making more. We see that with like Razer and certain unique products and so forth. Problem is the reliability on Razer was kind of crap. And so I would prefer them to spend more money on like making boards more resilient because again, for as many motherboards Apple sell, surprisingly a lot of them still work, even if they get old. So they are, in some areas, some of them have fatal flaws. If somebody watched like Mac repairs and so forth from, what's the guy that does the Mac repairs and so forth that's quite popular?
I don't know.
But people will Google it and so forth. There's obviously some designs where it's like, this is literally, they've designed this with the oversight and this thing's going to break imminently. And Mac has done that a couple of times where with NVIDIA GPUs desoldering themselves and certain Macs just dying randomly because of this component they've installed is completely trash and it just burns itself out and then dies. So Mac can do that as well. So, but I would prefer mainly the aesthetics around the corners. Like a lot of people look at Mac and just go, it actually feels well built. So I would, for hardware side, I will look at that. Also the keyboard manufacturers, try and innovate more on keyboards. It's like, yes, it's a keyboard, but innovation.
Actually, Apple did very badly there in recent years with the butterfly keyboard, which everyone hated.
There is criticisms, all valid, but they actually tried something different, which I'll give them kudos to as well. Not just using the same keyboard over and over. It's like, what's a keyboard be like? You don't know if you like something until you actually used it. Look at iPhones. You never knew you needed an iPhone until the iPhone came around. Same thing, keyboards as well. If there's an innovation, a massive innovation with keyboards, you go, oh crap, why did we do in the old days? We all said that this was so great. In the meantime, it's crap. Trackpads as well. We didn't think we needed to innovate in trackpads, but we had to. So sometimes you need to do something different to actually innovate in some areas. So for hardware, that's the main things I would look at. For software, that's mainly for Windows. Windows needs to get a better ecosystem going. I think they're trying to.
When you say a better ecosystem, do you mean to emulate Apple's walled garden? Or?
No, not really like that, but having a better storefront. Their storefront sucks. Microsoft storefront just sucks. We need to accept that, and Microsoft needs to accept it. I think they kind of know, but they're like, we don't know actually how to fix it, and that's a problem. They need to make a better storefront, because again, I think I would like them to compete with storefront that's a good compromise between all players, between the actual user and the app developer and the operating system user, and saying, I think Microsoft is trying to do something like that, but to implement it properly, that's where Microsoft needs to really focus, is in that implementation of getting that right, making it easier for people to just open the Microsoft Store and get the thing they're looking for. If they want to buy a game through there, they can get Steam through the App Store. That marketplace should be not. That's what the problem is. I wouldn't call it a marketplace, because you're not necessarily going to buy things there. It's not necessarily for sale. It's like, where do you get your programs from? If you want to easily get AutoCAD, now you have to Google AutoCAD. If they make it in the store, you can just get AutoCAD. There we go. We see that more and more happening. And again, it's also the users, probably not PC users, not used to going to the Microsoft Store to go look for it. But that's when Microsoft needs to innovate a bit. And
that's true. I never go to the store to get something on Windows.
Exactly. But with Apple, it's the immediate you see. Now, so Windows need to make that perception and make it worth app developers' time. And actually compare to Apple, where Apple says, no, you have to figure everything out. Have proper amount of people in there, because you can look at how many people have completely thrown their toys out of the car trying to get their app certified for Apple. It's sometimes like an uphill battle, and it's like even big players struggle. So I wish Windows tries to emulate that, but then does it 100 times better, where they actually have the amount of people in the back end that can say, should we take the calls, take that feedback, help the people, and also filter through it, and have the marketplace not be as humongous as what sometimes happens with Android, because you don't want that, because then it's too much. It's just like the amount of crapware that's there is just enormous. So Microsoft needs to learn from that and see how they can filter all the crapware and get developers, I would say, more trying to emulate what game developers do and indie developers do. So kind of do what Valve tried to do, but kind of failed with the whole indie market, because that also got completely flooded with stupidware. So there needs to be a compromise there, where they can make sure that the stuff that gets on there is decent, but not limited, where it's like nobody can come into it. You see, so I wish Microsoft needs to up the game in that area. Operating system side, more hardware, focus on hardware. I think that we see that now with a 3-year cycle with Microsoft. I think they're going to quickly end of life operating systems quicker and have better support for newer CPUs, because that's one thing where Windows does lose out, is because they need to support so many CPUs. It's like that the whole thing where it's like you try and do everything, but you can't do one thing right. That's now where they fell into that trap as well, is to get better hardware support, exploit the actual hardware. Problems with that means it basically makes all the hardware redundant quicker, but that's a good way to save face and keep up with Apple, because Apple has that advantage.
I think that's a good place to call wraps on our discussion on Apple, on Mac.
Mac. Oh, Macky Mac.
Interesting chat. It's going to be interesting to see how both ecosystems do. Both ecosystems do copy from each other, and they do kind of advance in tandem.
Yeah. I think the one is Apple is way better still in the implementation versus Windows. Windows still needs to learn a lot there. So hopefully they can learn quickly.
Remember, if you want to subscribe to this show, you can do so on YouTube at youtube.com/TechCentral. That's our main feed. You will get everything PC. You'll get TC Daily, our daily tech show, and you will also get the Impact series, our latest production. You can also subscribe to Tech Central's newsletter at techcentral.co.za/newsletter, and you'll keep up to date with all the latest local and international tech news. And you'll also, of course, get access through that newsletter to all of the tech shows that we publish. Also want to thank HP and Microsoft for sponsoring this production for this season of Everything PC. Thanks, guys. We're going to be bringing you a special episode soon with HP and Microsoft executives. Look forward to learning more about the HP hardware and learning how Microsoft integrates with that. So looking forward to that discussion. And next week, we are going to be doing something pretty cool. We are going to be talking about our most desirable products. desirable tech. I see there's a few items on the list here already. Looking forward to unpacking some of those. And we're going to be going where money is no object.
Yes, we're going to.
It's basically talking about what ultimate PC we'd like to buy and spec it out with.
Yeah, so end of this year, a lot of interesting things coming out. Intel, AMD, everybody's launching everything end of the year.
Yeah, exactly. We're going to be recording that episode post the keynote and launch of the new NVIDIA graphics cards.
Yes.
So we will talk about those next week as well. What else, Gerhard? I think that's it.
Sponsors, HP.
No, we've done that.
Yes.
We've done that.
Thanks.
HP
That's
and Microsoft. That's it for this week. If you want to mail us, if you want to send us hate mail, if we've said something that's really offended you, info@techcentral.co.za. If you want to send us some love, also info@techcentral.co.za. Gerhard Pretorius, you work for Computers Only. I work for Tech Central. Until next time, cheers.